with a whole lot of truth. Remedy Revolution is here for you. Ooh. And now here's your host, Erin Page.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Remedy Revolution podcast. My name is Erin, and I am so honored to have today's guest. For those of you who have listened to the podcast for a while, I'm sure you remember Dr. Jim Meehan, who was a guest on the show twice. We very unfortunately lost him, and I always tell people that he really did inspire me to do this podcast in the first place. He actually was going to be a very regular guest until everything went down with cancer. And so I am so honored to welcome his wife, Cathy, who is carrying on his mission, the Meehan Mission. Cathy Meehan, it is a pleasure to have you.
Erin, thank you so very much. And it's interesting that that man, Jim, he inspired so many people. And I am thankful that he inspired you to, create and just keep going with your podcasting. And, likewise, I mean, who in the world thought that I would be doing podcast also? But, he didn't leave us any choice because somebody's got to carry on the mission to help educate parents and expose the corruption in the medical field. And that's exactly what we're doing. So I know he is looking down. I know he's proud. Whew, I'll try not to get emotional throughout the podcast, but I'm sure with all my heart, he's so proud of you too. And just congratulations on all that you're doing to keep the truth out.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, he is very much missed, but I am so grateful that he has leaves behind such a strong, fierce woman in you who is able to carry on this mission. I have always recognized the power of women when it comes to our healthcare and when it comes to pediatrics because we are fierce mama bears. So
Mhm.
that's a lot of what you are doing. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you are implementing Dr. Jim's mission and seeing it through?
Oh, well, I'd love to. Thanks for the opportunity. So, I'm going to start a little bit at the beginning of why I'm even here and how we're carrying that out. And, it was, oh gosh, not to age myself, but we're pushing over 35 years now that, I met Jim in college. And we were both undergraduate students at the University of Tulsa. And I was focused on business and marketing, and he was doing his science and pre-med. And so that was kind of like, where everything started. And we ended up making this really great team because he was always the medical side. And then I was working on, business and marketing. And I actually, just for reference, right after I graduated from college, I went into the pharmaceutical world. So I was a pharmaceutical rep. And, it's really interesting looking back because at that time in our lives, we believed everything mainstream medical had to push out at us, right? I mean, vaccines are safe and effective. Doctors are smart. Doctors are critical thinkers. They are only there to get you healthy. And you look at us now, and many of us, especially your audience, have probably woken up to the fact that number one, vaccines aren't necessarily safe and effective. The physicians aren't out to make you healthy. Mainstream medical physicians, the whole system in pharmaceuticals, they are meant to just manage your disease and keep you on medications. They're not looking for, a health or a cure or anything in that matter. So I really appreciate, God put us through these little, if you want to call them stepping stones, so that we would, get to where we are today. And that was, we experienced mainstream medical. We believed all the lies. We didn't question anything. And then the questions started coming. And in particular was with Jim when he was actually it's an ophthalmologist, which is an eye surgeon. So he, looks in the back of your eyes and does surgeries. And he was a resident in his ophthalmology years. And he was basically as a editor, looking through articles and studies, and a couple in particular showed retinal hemorrhaging associated with vaccinations.
Hmm.
And so that would be bleeding behind the eye associated with vaccinations. And, that was like, what? Vaccines are safe and effective. Because, he learned in medical school that you memorize the dosing chart and you just administer them and they've saved lives and that's it. But so he pointed it out to the senior editor that, these are really interesting studies. Maybe we should get them published. And the senior editor was like, no, Jim, you got to think about it. The pharmaceutical companies pay for our books, they pay for the schools, they support us. And at that point, Jim wasn't really ready to rock the boat or anything. It was just, another thing and move on. He's a busy resident and getting that done. But another one of these little, aha moments for him was as a resident in ophthalmology, if a child was brought into the children's hospital for suspected shaken baby syndrome, they would call in the ophthalmologist. So on several occasions, he would go over there, he would do an examination, check the back of the eye, and there would be retinal hemorrhaging. And, that is an automatic like check mark for, yep, that's shaken baby syndrome. But it was very perplexing because the babies had no bruises, they had no broken arms. I mean, the parents were adamant that they didn't touch their baby, yet he had to check that box for shaken baby syndrome.
Hmm.
So, those things were like, a little perplexing. And like I said, those were like some little hints that God like puts in our lives. And so as Jim was a critical thinking doctor, as the years started to go by, he started, digging a little bit deeper in down that vaccine rabbit hole, if you want to call it that. Meanwhile, we had 5 children, and all 5 of our children received the childhood vaccines on schedule, on time, up until we stopped when HPV vaccine came out. By this time, Jim knew enough and he's like, we're stopping, we're not going to do anymore. So that again is kind of that little history of we believed vaccines were safe and effective until he was using his critical thinking skills and we decided to stop vaccinating our kids. But I have to tell you, our kids were sick. They had asthma, pneumonia, eczema. My daughter, Tori, would scratch her legs so badly at night there would be blood on the sheets in the morning. Our daughter Macy didn't even speak until after she was 3 years old.
Hmm.
And our baby Daniel, I mean, he was the one I was like, we're not having any more babies because this kid cries all the time. I was like, I'm done having babies. And I look back and I'm like, no wonder they were so sick. I mean, I can just look at their vaccine records and just see. And not only that, I mean, 2 of my kids had measles-like rashes after the MMR vaccine. And even Allie, as a teenager, she went to Europe and came home with head to toe measles. So it didn't even prevent it. So I just don't think they work very well. So, that's really how that went on. That's how
Yeah.
that went on. But then one of the really other important things that happened was in 2013, our first grandson was born. And while in the hospital, because, okay, sorry guys, this is before we knew about, home birth and midwives and all that other stuff. But we did know enough not to vaccinate. So our grandson was born. And while in the hospital, the nurse came into my daughter's room and said, okay, you need to sign this. And literally at that time, handed over a clipboard. Jim was there and said, what is she signing? And the nurse said, well, it's for his Hep B vaccine. And Jim said, he knew enough at this time. He said, well, she didn't test positive. The mom did not test positive for Hep B. So why is my grandson getting the vaccination? And so, they exchanged words and knowledge, and Jim won. And so our grandson did not receive any vaccines while in the hospital. And then we're going to go about 6 weeks out because we're programmed that we bring our babies to the pediatrician. So Allie brought her baby to the pediatrician, and while at the pediatrician's office, they were harassing her to catch him up on his vaccinations, get all the vaccinations. She calls Jim crying, and Jim says, I love his line, tell them I'm a fifth degree black belt and I'm going to be there in 2.3 seconds if they don't let you just leave the office now. So Allie left the office, never to return to the pediatrician's office. So, and that pressure, I mean, that in itself is alarming that anybody is going to pressure a mom into something that she's not comfortable with. That means she either needs more education or she needs time. But that's what informed consent is, which we can talk about that too. But then the next really big thing was when Vaxxed came out. And I do hope that your viewers have watched Vaxxed, because that really kind of was the eye-opening documentary of the CDC whistleblower, Dr. William Thompson, who basically said, we destroyed all of the data showing the MMR vaccine and autism. And you know, we went to a premiere in Oklahoma City because that's how you got to see Vax. They would have to
Right.
rent out movie theaters. Remember that? I mean, it was I would like to say it was fun times because we all got together and we could strategize and really make plans.
Right.
But that movie, when it was over, the theater was silent. I mean, it was just silent. People didn't know what to say. I mean, it was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The truth is really coming out. And when we left that movie theater, I remember Jim came back and he did a video on YouTube, went completely viral about this MD doctor speaking out against the childhood vaccine schedule and the corruption with the CDC and everything. And of course, you can't find it anymore because it has been scrubbed from YouTube. But, that was like, okay, we can't sit still anymore. That somebody has got to do something. And there were very few medical doctors that actually spoke out. There were a few, but not a lot. We had an independent practice. We weren't associated with hospitals. We weren't in a big group, so nobody could say, Jim, tone it down a little bit. In fact, it just made him amplify his voice even more.
Mhm.
And so, that was a really big stepping stone. And then 2020 came along, right? And that was COVID. And we all know what happened in COVID. And I like to say that it was a big blessing in disguise because COVID brought everyone together. And that's where, because people like Aaron, I mean, we already knew you through the childhood vaccine corruption and the CDC and everything. And I recall hearing many people say it's going to take an adult vaccine to really wake up
Right.
America and the world. And sure enough, that's exactly what COVID did. Not only did it bring together all of these groups, I mean, you could be like a pro-gun, pro-constitution, freedom of speech, pro whatever it was. But when the government starts telling you what you have to do and what you can't do, it just really it was this glue that brought everybody together. And in particular, there was Clay Clark did the tour, the Reawaken America tour. And Jim, started with the first one in April of 2020. And that really was key because not only did this tour go around the United States informing people of the corruption, but that's where, in particular, we became really good friends with Dr. Paul Thomas.
Mhm.
And, he's a pediatrician. He wrote the Vaccine Friendly Plan and
Yep.
then most recently Vaxxed, which I highly recommend that one for people. But we were like, hey, Paul, or hey, Dr. Paul, when's somebody going to do something for pediatrics? We need, something for pediatrics. And that's kind of where we got the idea of Mindset Kids, which we'll talk about a little later, which is basically how we just keep like-minded pediatricians together and keep kids out of pediatricians' offices so they can't be forced into medical procedures. And that was really kind of that. But one thing to me that people don't really think about is the numbers of really and the growth of chronic disease, the growth of pediatricians. And I always like to pull out some statistics. And when you look around 1990-ish, so let's go back 40-ish years, the pediatric population, and I'm talking about ages 0 to 17, was around 64 million. And then you move on up to around 2020, that number is about 72 million.
Mhm.
Percentage in growth, we're talking about 14%. So good growth, lots of kids, everybody's, doing great. But let's look at the number of pediatricians at that time. So we started out with around like maybe 25,000 pediatricians, and over that same period, that number has hit like 40, 50, 60,000, depending on where you get your numbers. And not only that, but if you include like the pediatric subspecialties and physician extenders that are focused on pediatrics, we're looking at over 160,000. So that growth is well over 140%. So, Aaron, it's a simple question. If the growth in pediatrics has grown by about 14%, growth in pediatricians has grown around 140%, what do you think chronic disease is going to do? Is it going to go up, or is chronic disease going to go down now that we have all these pediatricians?
Well, I think the answer is so obvious. And, when
Yeah.
we're looking at medical care, you've got more doctors, you've got slightly more children, but we're talking about this massive growth in chronic disease.
Yeah.
And the numbers are across the board going up. And so
Right.
with no end in sight. Um,
Hmm.
and I think one thing too that you brought up, which I think is incredibly important, so I don't want to gloss over it, is this idea that so many doctors in general, but of course pediatricians as well, practice in these large hospital-based systems,
Hmm.
or large clinical practices that are managed by insurance companies or a number of other conglomerates, if you will, people that are financially motivated. So doctors really aren't incentivized to help their patients get better. In fact, it's the opposite. They're completely incentivized to bring in more patients and see them more often.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. It's when you look at the financial bias behind pediatricians, and you'll have those pediatricians in there saying, "Oh, we don't make any money on vaccines," and that's just a bunch of bull crap. I mean, it is bull crap. And we know for a fact that there's insurance companies out there. Blue Cross Blue Shield does it, Aetna does it. They do a P for P, pay for performance. So they are literally giving bonuses and kickbacks for practices to have a certain number of patients vaccinated. And that's why you see people get a letter, and I've seen the letter where, I'm sorry, but you are no longer, um, you know, a member of our practice due to your, decision to not follow the CDC vaccination schedule. And they're kicking these people out. And, that is so wrong. That again goes back to informed consent, which just a reminder to everybody, that's two words: informed consent. The informed means that you have been given the information of risks and benefits and alternatives. And so you have been informed. It might be in speaking, it might be a sheet, it might be what, or, go to this website, but you have been informed. And that second part is called consent. And consent means yes or no. That's all it means. Yes or no. Then you have the ability to consent, yes or no. The problem is when you say no and they belittle you, they refuse to give you services, they basically, coercion is what they've gotten into right there. So, that is a whole nother level and a whole nother issue. But yes, informed consent is yes or no once you've received that information. So, but yeah, going back
it's
to the, yeah.
so often, I just interrupt you for 1 second, but so often too, the vast majority of people are not truly informed. They're
Right.
told,
Mhm.
we're going to do this today. No, I'm sorry, you are my provider. You give me the advice, and I decide if I'm going to take that advice or run for the hills. And, that is your choice as a patient. So I just want to make sure that people that are listening, when your doctor tells you something, you need to be your own best advocate. Talk to them, ask them, why are you recommending this? What are the risks involved? Am I in the high risk profile? Am I, in the low risk profile? You don't have to just blindly accept whatever your doctor tells you to do as gospel. And I think that's where so many of us, especially people in the older generations, where they've been conditioned to trust in the authority figures. So anyway, sorry, just really wanted to clarify that most of the time, from my perspective, the things that I've seen in the medical community, you don't get truly informed consent. They might give you a sheet of paper, especially with vaccines, that has like, this is the benefits of the vaccines. But if that doesn't have the risks listed, it's not the same thing.
Right. You're so right. It is not the same thing. They're not giving the full story. And I want to go back to that, a lot of the population trusts their doctor. And that was me as a mom of 5 children. I trusted my pediatrician.
Mhm.
And like I said, but I look back now and I'm like, I can just see all of the times my children were sick and what was happening. And they told me that Macy not talking until after she was 3 was normal. But here's the thing, and I say this many times, what is normal is because it is not normal. It was common. It was
Right.
happening all the time with many other children in their practice, and that's what they were seeing. But that is not a normal development to not speak until after 3 years old. That was not normal. It was not normal for our kids to have asthma and pneumonia. I mean, it was common. But I trusted the pediatrician. And that's where it's like, if anyone, anyone would have said to me, Cathy, do you know what they are injecting into your children? I would have been like, no. What are they? I thought it was a little piece of virus and some saline solution. I mean, come on. My husband's a physician. It's
Yeah.
it's saline and a little piece of virus. That's what they're injecting into my child. If someone had given me a list of ingredients, oh no, by the way, it's heavy metals, polysorbate 80, little like baby cells. I mean, aborted fetal cell fragments, people. If
Yeah.
anyone would have just mentioned that to me, I would have been that researching mom, and I would have been. So that's why I always say just trust your instincts and just plant a seed. Because, we can't control what the other person does with the information, but we can have the responsibility to just plant a seed and point them in a direction to find more information. And that's, one of the really big takeaways that I want people to realize, that it might feel awkward that you suggest something like, have you ever researched vaccines or anything like that? But to not plant the seed is, that is a decision I would not want to live with. I would much rather be the one that plants the seed and says, you know, have you even thought about it? Because that would have solved a lot of my problems. It really would have. And we are very blessed that none of our children had, extreme neurological disorders or disabilities from their vaccinations, but it definitely affected their health. And we still don't know going into the future, 20, 30, 40 years later, what that's going to do to them.
Mhm.
So it's, but we just, we eat healthy now and we change our lifestyles. What we do, we change our lifestyle. But anyway, so trusting your physician, we are told to trust our physicians. And until somebody, plants that seed, or one of our own children or one of our own family members or close friends is actually injured by a medical procedure, we usually just continue to trust the physician. And we cannot do that. And, I, the other thing, most physicians are not critical thinkers. And I can attest to that as a pharmaceutical rep. I would go in with this beautiful, slick paper that listed these symptoms and then the product that they were supposed to prescribe. And that was it. So it was like, hey, Dr. Smith, if your patient has this, 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 and this, prescribe this. And that was it. There was no talk about, have they changed their lifestyle? Are they eating right, exercising? How's it? And then you'd come back the next month and the patient had a side effect. Oh, well, a side effect. Well, if they have a side effect like this, or this, then prescribe this. I mean, it's just this never-ending circle because they want chronic disease. They may not admit that they want chronic disease, but they're not critically thinking to heal people. They are just managing your disease and they're bringing in those people. And, that's one of the other problems. Something to say?
Yeah, no, so
Yeah.
being charitable, if you will, I think also, they're not trained in any of these other things, any modalities other than pharmacology, right? So they're
Right.
not educated as far as like other things, that lifestyle changes that might assist their
Mhm.
patients. And I'll just tell a little side story here. So I've had several patients who've been in inpatient for a number of different things, but a lot of disordered eating. And many of them also have neuroimmune kinds of disorders. And so, if I am to recommend things like herbs, I just had this happen the other day. I had the nurse push back and say, oh, well, we can't give those herbs because we don't know what it's going to do to the GI. And she's already had some GI symptoms. And I'm thinking, okay, so what is your alternative, right? And the alternative is they're going to give what, like psych meds and other kinds of meds that have a laundry list of, potential side effects, but they're terrified to give single dose herbs in a tiny dose. Yeah, I'm talking like a few drops. So
Yeah.
it's like there's no um, there's no ability to even conceptualize that something other than a pharmaceutical could be beneficial for their
Mhm.
patient, and not elicit the same kinds of side effects that pharmaceuticals would.
No, I mean, you got it. You are so right because they are number one, they're not taught nutrition in medical school. They are not taught alternative therapies. We can thank the Rockefellers for that. And I'm sure if you haven't done a podcast on that, you need to bring up the history of that because
Oh yeah.
that's what changed the entire the the entire world of the medical community was the introduction of pharmaceuticals. And, their main thing was to eliminate natural holistic remedies, because you couldn't make drugs out of them. You couldn't patent them, so forget those. And also going back to, so Jim was an ophthalmologist and he would do a lot of end stage disease things like people with macular degeneration and just the diabetic problems that diabetes causes in patients. And his thing was, I can't go back 10, 15 years ago into their lives and tell them how to prevent this, which is prevent with holistic living, the mindset, which was his whole acronym of microbiome, inflammation, nutrition, detox, sleep, exercise, and total hormone balance. And, that's really what caused him to pivot his practice. And so he went from ophthalmology, eye surgeon, making a whole lot of money to functional medicine and preventative medicine, no insurance, cash basis, because insurance companies won't reimburse it to, where we are now. But it was that transformation because he was a critical thinker. Again,
Right.
very few doctors are critical thinkers. And that's probably one of the roots of our problem is in the pharmaceutical world, they don't want critical thinking doctors. They, um, I say they pick our med students nowadays, basically. They don't want critically thinking medical students. They want robots that can memorize symptoms, spit out a pharmaceutical. And then you have a symptom, so we're going to spit out another pharmaceutical. They don't want you to cure anybody's disease. They want you to manage their disease. And just another little side note, when you talked about some of the patients where they wouldn't even do like an herbal remedy. I mean, well, a lot of times it's due to their malpractice
Mhm.
because we see this a lot for in oncology and cancer people where, and again, Jim passed away from chemotherapy. He didn't die of cancer, and that's a whole nother thing. Um, but his mainstream oncologist that we were seeing, she couldn't even look at ivermectin, fenbendazole, B17, SOT, all of these therapies because it didn't fit in her box, and anything outside of her box would be considered malpractice.
Mm.
So, and I don't think people realize that they only have mainstream medical oncologists, and I'm sure other specialties, they only have so many tools in their toolkit, and they are not going to spend the time researching anything else unless it's on their list and the administration said, okay, well, you can do this and you can do this and you can do this. And that's all they're going to do. They have no desire to, because they can't do it. They can't implement it. They can't prescribe it. They can't suggest it. And that's really part of it. All we have is problems in the medical system. So what do? We're gonna create solutions, right? We're gonna create solutions. There will always be mainstream medical. But what's happening is this industry is growing of functional medicine, preventive medicine, natural, homeopathy, chiropractic. It's naturopaths. It's this side is just growing like crazy. And we need that. We need good health. We need to eliminate disease. We need to heal people, root cause. And it's happening. But we're always going to have this other side because number one, we're always going to have insurance. And we're also always going to have people that don't want to work for their health. We've seen it in our practice. Somebody will come over because they've got some chronic disease and they're tired of what their mainstream medical physician tells them. So they come over and we're like, okay, so we're gonna, focus on nutrition and sleep and detoxifying your environment. And we're gonna do all of these things. And they never come back. Why? Because they want a pill for every ill.
Mhm.
So it's, I highly predict we'll always have a parallel system. And our side is going to have all the critical thinkers and the healers and the people that can, help you lead a healthy, vibrant life to the best of your body's ability because God made our bodies, I mean, just so spectacularly that they can, given the right, environment and nutrition and, eliminating the toxins, the body can literally heal itself. It really can. And then you're going to have these people that want a pill for every ill. So that's, that's that. That's my rant on there too.
Yeah, well, so the most recent show I actually talked about. By the way, I want to publicly thank you, Cathy, because I did go into what I experienced over the holidays, which was a rapid descent into anemia. I still don't know exactly why, but I immediately reached out to Cathy, and she helped me connect with one of their doctors and get that resolved and taken care of. But it took me down this very strange path through mainstream medicine, which is not a realm that I typically live in. So it was very, very interesting to me because the only way that I was able to get the iron infusions that I was told were medically necessary by a number of different practitioners was by telling them that I would pay cash. And so a lot of this, the difficulty with the current system has to do with this incestuous relationship between the insurance industry and medicine. And it makes it so doctors are, handicapped by their, the powers that be, if you will, by not only medical boards, but their bosses, their conglomerates who own their hospitals, the insurance system, which again is incentivized to actually provide a higher level of care, even if it's not really necessary. We don't default to the simplest, most economical version of treatment, which is insane to me. You would think, well, insurance companies, they don't want to pay out money, but because of this relationship that they have with all of these hospital-based systems, they have they are beholden to their shareholders, and they have certain thresholds that they have to meet. So they are still trying to pay out for higher levels of care because the threshold that they need to meet for like more emergent kind of care is much higher. So it's this whole very seedy system. And Cathy, what you've been doing, and what I think a lot of us in the natural health world are attempting to do as well, is to build a parallel system that allows patients to be in charge of their care. And like you said, not everybody is going to want that, right? There's always going to be people who do want to just, show up to their doctor's office and for their doctor to hand them a prescription for whatever it is. And that's
Right.
okay. They should have the option to be able to do that. But the people who don't want to do that, we need to build these systems that eventually are accepted by, whether or not it's, the insurance system as it's set up currently, or if it's something new, which I think is probably going to be more likely, but we'll see. But some kind of system that rewards people for staying healthy, right? So, too much of the current system is, you're paying all this money out of pocket, for example, for your premiums, and getting very little care back unless you have some kind of catastrophic emergency. And
Mhm.
so there's no incentive, right? People are deterred from going to the ER, for example, because they don't want to have to get, a bill for their entire deductible, for example. Um,
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit about what you're doing when it comes to building some kind of a parallel system.
Oh, you bet. I mean, because that's what we like to do. We like to be disruptors and creators of things. And that was Jim's brain was always going, always going. And one of the smartest men I've ever known. I miss his brain
Hmm.
so much. Hmm. Whew, so we had I'll be right here in a second.
It's okay, Kathy.
It's okay. Um, Oh, if he just knew all of the successes we're having now, not just we, but like as a nation with Bobby Kennedy and reducing the childhood vaccine schedule and getting rid of Hep B and turning the food pyramid upside down. I mean, all of these things. I mean, he's dancing. I know. So what we did, obviously, we had this adult practice, Meehan MD, where we do telemedicine. And we actually, before Jim passed away, we were in about 35 different states. And then after he passed away, I was like, what do I do? Right. I mean, it's like we've got employees, we've got patients, we were just starting Mindset Kids, the whole conception. And I mean, there was no doubt in my mind that I had to keep going. I mean, no doubt. And my biggest thing was, where do I find the strength? I mean, besides I found the strength from God, but he has provided me with the team that is just incredible, and the resources and the connection and the drive. And so what we did was we actually expanded the adult clinic into all 50 states, hired a couple more physicians, and that's going well. And then we stayed at the drawing board for Mindset Kids, which was Jim's baby, which was an alternative for pediatrics. And I like to tell people, I mean, this is literally the future of pediatrics. And if people want to copy what we're doing, I copy what we're doing, because we've got 72 million kids plus out there. So we need an alternative for pediatrics. And so what we did is we took what we were already doing. We're already doing telemedicine. We're already contracting with physicians. We have this amazing electronic medical record system. We've got this amazing team here at MeehanMD. And so we just put together Mindset Kids. And so just a little like background on that is we really want to teach parents how to care for their own children and what to do for non-emergency things. And then if something is like, I probably need a pediatrician for this, well, then they can go through Mindset Kids and find a like-minded pediatrician for telemedicine calls, or we are in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so people can come to our brick and mortar business here. But the whole concept was, what did we do before pharmaceuticals? What did grandma do when you had a fever? And I tell you, she didn't run you to the emergency room just because you had a fever. She didn't run to the emergency room or the pediatrician because you had a stomach ache. There were remedies that were passed down from generation to generation. And so what we did is we started with, I'll show you, it's this little natural health guide. And the natural health guide was written by Meg, who is our naturopath here, Jim, and then also Dr. Paul Thomas, who's a pediatrician we talked about.
Yep, he's
And
been on the show too.
yeah, he's such a great man. I mean, what he's done for our children's health is like just such a blessing. And so we created the guide, and it covers anything from like constipation to ear infections to sunburns to, I mean, just all these things. And it's natural remedies, and then a section on when to call the doctor. Because there are instances where, or maybe you're a new mom, and so you
Right.
need a little bit of, you want a little bit of backup. And so we started with the guide, and then from the guide, what we did is we created a little home kit. Cute. My marketing team rocks, by the way, little Mindset Kids. And we talked about mindset, which is microbiome, inflammation, nutrition, detox, sleep, exercise, and total hormone balance. And so every family gets a handy home kit with the guide in it. They get the coolest little otoscope that connects to your cell phone, and it's a little app, and you can take pictures of the inner ear or like throat, nose, or skin lesions and send us pictures. You get a pulse ox, you get a little measuring tape, because we can help moms measure length and head circumference of their babies, and we do a little like milestones program. But it's the whole thing was designed to help educate parents. We do a private Facebook community. We have a public Facebook community. We've got webinars. I do the podcast. I bring in speakers. And the whole idea is to educate parents, make them feel comfortable handling their child's health at home. And, the concept was really make it affordable. So it's $29 a month for all of your kids. So whether you have 1 or 10 kids, no one with 11 kids has joined yet, but I'm sure I'd throw in that 11th kid for that $29 too. I mean, that's a lot of kids. So I don't know. But and then you just, we teach you how to manage your child's care at home. And then when you need a pediatric backup, you call us. We'll put you in touch with a care coordinator. And then if you need to see a pediatrician, then we'll say, okay, at 4 o'clock, you're, do a telemedicine visit with the pediatrician, and that visit is paid for in your $29. So it's
Where were
just
you
good.
guys 19 years ago? That's what I want to know
Well,
because
I don't
because I'm
know.
telling you, if I
Yeah.
had been kicked out of at least three pediatricians' offices because and my son was a home birth and never vaccinated, so nobody wanted to take
Right.
us on as patients. And there were a couple of times when I really felt like a little bit out of my depth, and I just wanted really a second opinion, a little bit of reassurance
Yes. Hmm.
and somebody to say, no, everything that you're doing is good, and maybe add this or whatever it might be, but some kind of guidance would have been so incredibly helpful. So,
Yeah. Yeah, just
yeah,
a little backup. I mean, that's
yeah,
that's the whole, and we, the new moms, they call us obviously more frequently, and which is fine because we want to educate. We want to help you be the scientist of your children's health. And then, I will give you a situation. We had a mom with a 10-year-old and called and said, I think my son has appendicitis. So, the nurse took down all the information and set up an appointment with telemedicine visit. And the doctor said, sounds like appendicitis, go to the ER.
hmm
And that, those are those situations where, other than that, she would have, she's like, I don't go to the ER. I don't go to doctor's offices unless it's, life or death. And in this
hmm
case, it was like, yes, you do need to go to the ER.
right.
And, it was also designed for, again, it's like the people that, I say you want a pediatrician, but you don't want a pediatrician, or you've been kicked out of a practice because you won't follow their medical procedure schedule. And it's those types of things. That's why we wanted to make it affordable and, and really focus on the education. Jim was so big on educating. And the tagline again, be the scientist of your own health. And if we can just help parents, and then you take that and you pass that down to your children as you get more confident in what you can manage and when to call the doctor. And we are always going to need emergency rooms, and we will always need hospitals, and we will always need pediatricians. We just don't need as many pediatricians, and we need critically thinking pediatricians. And so, that's why we team up with like-minded pediatricians that really want to, help find root cause or heal the child. And that's what was born, Mindset Kids. And it's been a real blessing. And again, I just know that Jim's like, you did it. You guys finally, got it going, and I am blessed to be such a big part of something that I think is going to change the way we treat and heal our kids. I really do.
Absolutely. Well, I'm praying for it to happen too. So, I know that Jim is looking down on all of us who have been so fierce in moving the needle and getting the health of our kids into a much better place. And I'm so glad that you are continuing his mission, such a worthy one. And I'm just honored to know you, Cathy.
Thank you, Erin. And I do want to let, all of your listeners know that they can go to mindset-kids.com and please mention Remedy in the, who referred you, so that we can thank Erin for that too. And I appreciate you so much.
All right, Cathy. So, every single
Yeah.
podcast, I ask 8 questions of all of our guests, and
Okay.
Dr. Jim has answered these questions. I do remember one of his answers offhand, actually. So,
Oh no, now I'm nervous. I was not nervous until this moment.
all right, all right. So, number one, if you could choose only one natural remedy for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Mm, let me think. What is the one that I use? Probably castor oil.
Nice. All
Yeah.
right. I use that often. My little tip for everybody listening,
Yeah.
sorry, this is off topic, but put a little bit of casserole in your belly button at night. It helps digestion. It's amazing. All
I'll do
right.
that tonight. I'll try that tonight.
All right. Number two, tell us something most people don't know about you.
Who's listening? Well, I have 7 grandchildren.
Aw.
How about
All
that?
right. Number 3, if I were to compile a playlist of happy music, what song would you suggest be added?
Whew. I love all kinds of music, and it's either contemporary Christian, and I'm going to have to go with Psalm 23. And it's a slow kind of song, but it makes me so happy because that's my song for Jim.
Aw,
Mhm.
nice. Do you want to know what he said?
What?
He said The Sound of Silence, but it was by a metal band um, that he said he really loved. And it surprised me. So anyway, so I still remember that. All right. What is your favorite guilty pleasure?
Oh gosh. So those people that do know me, I am like a workout-aholic, and I am like when it comes to food, my nutrition is spot on. So this sounds, I'll get a thing of raspberries and eat the whole thing of raspberries.
Nice. All
How's
right.
that?
All right. What is the most influential book you've ever read?
Oh, baby, the Bible every day, the Bible.
Awesome. What does the word revolution mean to you?
Revolution to me is disruptor because I think that's how we make change. And I'm proud to be a disruptor.
And what does the word remedy mean to you?
Remedy to me means solution. And that's what we need is we need solutions. Mhm.
And last question, if you were to impart one piece of wisdom onto our listeners, what would that be?
It would be do not be shy about spreading the truth. Yep.
One thing Dr. Jim was not shy whatsoever.
No, not at all. Used to joke about that. I'd be like, tone it down just a little bit. Just a little bit. No,
Uh,
no, no, no.
well, we miss him. I am so glad that you are carrying on his message, and I look forward to seeing you at another event in the future soon, Cathy. As always, you are such a wonderful human being, and I'm glad to know you. Thanks for being
Thank you,
here.
Erin.
Thank
Thanks.
you,
Have a
everyone, for
blessed day.
listening. All right, take care.
With hope as a guiding light, through darkest days we'll fight the night. With a whole lot of passion, with a whole lot of truth. Remedy Revolution is here for you.